Welcome to Independence, the FIEC podcast. This is a bonus episode for the next 10 minutes or so. We're going to be talking a bit about FIEC's centenary. It's our birthday. Before we do that, let me say, my name's Phil Topham. I'm Executive Director of the FIEC. With me is Adrian Reynolds, Head of our National Ministries.
Nice to be here.
So 100 years old. Happy birthday to FIEC.
Thank you. Do you want me to sing it?
I don't want you to sing it.
I think there's copyright issues with singing it, so okay.
We'd get a bill. We'd get a bill, wouldn't we? But we're 100 years old this year. Just tell us a bit about the history of FIEC, just in a few seconds.
Well, very briefly, a small number of churches got together in November 1922 at the YMCA in the City of London. Actually, very, very close to where Wesley was converted, just around the corner. So significant place in history. And November 1922, these 12 churches, 7 mission halls, a number of individuals got together and said, let's form a fellowship. For lots of different reasons, which you may have read about in other places, but it's essentially because they wanted to work together and recognise that there was strength in being together. So 100 years ago this November.
Fantastic. We're going to mark that, especially at our Leaders' Conference.
That's right.
We'll talk about another time, our Leaders' Conference coming up in Blackpool. But that's not the only way we're going to mark it. So we want to talk a bit about Pray for 100, which is something we've been planning here to mark our centenary.
That's right.
First of all, Adrian, what is it?
Well, Pray for 100 is an initiative that looks forward. Often with birthdays, you can get a bit nostalgic. You can look back. You can say, weren't the former days better? And essentially, as Christians, we need always to be thankful about the past, but we need to be looking forward. And especially we want to be looking forward with the work that God has given us to work together to reach Britain for Christ. So Pray for 100 is a way of sharing what we're doing in our churches so that we can all be praying for one another. So what we're going to be doing over the course of the next few months is collecting ideas and plans from churches, things that you, listeners in FIEC churches, are putting into place right now, and sharing those with other churches through a resource guide, prayer guide, so that we can pray for one another and do something really active in terms of sharing the mission of reaching Britain.
So if we're thinking about mission, can that be things that churches are already doing, or is it just things they're wanting to do?
It can be things they're already doing. I think what we really want to do is to hear about projects and initiatives that are kind of a stretching for you as a church. And that's going to be very driven by context. So, for example, if you're a well-established church, you've been around for lots of years, you've got a fairly good-sized congregation, we don't particularly want to hear about your toddler group. We do, but not for the Pray for 100. We want to hear about perhaps something new you're doing, perhaps a church plant you've got in mind, perhaps an innovative member of staff that you want to appoint to take on a new ministry, something like that. But equally, you might be a small village church with a smaller number of members, been struggling to get on the last few years, and just you've had the vision and the wherewithal just in the last few months to think, I am going to start a toddler group. Well, in that context, that's really exciting. That's a stretch. So we want to hear about things that are going to take the gospel forward, and we want to be praying for one another. And of course, that's a way that churches can serve one another, because as you read the prayer guide, not only will you be energized to see what the Lord is doing in other places and be wanting to say, praise God, you'll also be thinking, hey, hang on, we could do that, or we could do something like that. So it's actually a great way of sharing gospel work together.
So we're going to compile all these initiatives. We're going to put them all in one place. So it's going to be a prayer book, something like that?
Yeah, so it's going to be a prayer guide, which will launch at the Leaders' Conference in November, and we'll have some ideas for how churches can use that. It might just be that you give it to individuals in churches. It might be that you use it in a prayer meeting on a Sunday morning, or whatever. There'll be some other resources to go with it. But the key resource is, let's get praying for one another's gospel work. And in that way, we are sharing in the work of mission.
And there's all sorts of initiatives going on up and down the country. We want to hear about them. So I guess the message is, get in touch with us. Let us know what you're doing.
That's right.
In mission in your community.
Exactly right. There's a very simple form to fill out to tell us about them on the website, and it'll take you through a number of questions just to say, what are the prayer points, what are you doing in summary, and those sorts of things. And you can find that on the website, fiec.org.uk/100, spelt out 100.
Fantastic.
And you'll get to the right page.
Now, everything needs prayer. We want to cover this in prayer.
Yeah, and we don't want to underestimate that.
No, absolutely.
So actually, it's a prayer guide. Is that a great way to mark 100 years? It's a fantastic way to mark 100 years, because what could be better than knowing that the initiative that I'm pouring my heart and soul into in the local church is being prayed for by Christians around the country? I think that's really significant.
Absolutely. But other projects might need some money, mightn't they? So
all projects need money, I think, at some level.
But you might be listening to this thinking, if only we had X amount of money, we'd be able to do Y or Z. So are there ways in which we can help churches think through putting on something new, perhaps, in the realms of mission.
We've got some money to pass on.
Oh, go on.
So we've got, we think about 500,000, maybe a little bit more of money, which of course across all our churches is not a huge amount, but it will be significant for some people. We've got £500,000 of mission fund money. Yep. That's come from, in part from a church closure, in part it's come from gifts from churches, which actually is the best kind of gift. We love that most of all, when churches have a vision for actually sharing the abundance they have with other churches, and they've asked us to help with that. So we've got about £500,000, and when you submit your prayer topic, your initiative, your idea, your plan, your vision, whatever it may be, there's a little box that says, do you want to apply for funding? And of course, if you tick that box, we can't guarantee you'll get money. There'll be a process to go through, like some of you will know we did a couple of years ago. But the idea will be, we want to distribute that money. What a great way to mark 100 years, actually, is not just to get churches praying for one another, but actually is to provide some funding to do things in the future. And here's another idea. Funding doesn't need to be limited to what we can provide through our mission fund. So we're hoping that when you see the prayer guide, you might not only be energized to think, that's a great work, we can pray for that, but actually your church might say, that's a great work we could get behind in financial ways. So we're hoping this will blossom into many great things for the Lord. And
that's one of the ways we can work together as churches, isn't it? By supporting gospel work somewhere completely different from our own context. We can make those connections through the ministry of FIEC.
That's exactly right. And actually that's quite difficult to make happen nationally. So geographically, it can often happen. You know, you're in a city together with other churches, or you're in a county together with other churches. You've probably got natural connections. But how do I, for example, as a leader of a church in the Midlands, get behind a work that's happening in Cornwall? How would I hear about it? How would I get energised about it? How would I perhaps even fund it if I wanted to? Well, this is the way that it can happen.
So £500,000 from the Mission Fund, what kind of projects would we want to get behind? So if you're listening to this thinking, what sort of project could I apply to FIEC for Mission Fund money for? Any examples you can give us, Adrian?
I mean, the simple answer to that, by the way, is it's as broad as you want it to be. We want to hear about innovative ideas, things that will further your mission. So it could be, for example, appointing a worker, especially if you're doing that for the first time. This is kind of a new step for you as a church. So it might be something as simple as appointing a worker. It might be doing some work on your building that makes it accessible to a whole new group of people. So there's a church that we know in the FIEC in Northern Ireland, which has a sensory room to help with children with autism. So it might be something like that, or we want to do that, and that will actually help us out to reach out to a whole new group of people. So it doesn't need to be a kind of, we're running a holiday Bible club, or we're running a toddler group. You can apply for those things as well. But we're encouraging churches to think a little bit perhaps out of the box in terms of how they can take their mission work forward.
Are there any things that perhaps we don't want to hear about from a funding perspective? Let's just be honest about that. Are there things that we don't, probably won't fund?
Yes, I mean, it's a mission fund. So it is about that. We're especially focused on the mission of the church to reach the lost. So I think if the roof is leaking and you just need to fix the roof, we're unlikely to have money for that, I think. Obviously, we realise that the mission of the church is holistic, and it's not just about reaching the lost, it's about building up the saints as well. But I think to mark 100 years, we're really excited about how do we go out with the gospel in the 21st century. And so we really want to fund projects which are about going out with the good news of Jesus who saves.
So let's summarise this Pray for 100 then. So we want 100 initiatives on mission, which we're going to gather together in a book. We're going to publish that for the Leaders Conference. That's going to be put into people's hands in November when they come to Blackpool. Churches are going to be encouraged to pray through all that. But as well as that, there's £500,000 to give away for projects from the Mission Fund.
You've got it. We have missed out one important thing, which is just to say it's not one application per church for the projects. So especially if you're perhaps a more established church, you've got lots of things going on, there might be 2 or 3 exciting things that you've got, irons in the fire, perhaps a partnership with another church down the road, perhaps a new appointment. And feel free to submit as many things as you want to as a church. We want to hear about the breadth of mission work that's going on in the FIEC. We think that's the best way to commemorate 100 years of God's faithfulness to us and 100 years of reaching out with the good news of Jesus.
So we've been blessed with these resources. We want to give them away to help serve our churches in mission. So please send us your initiatives. Please apply for Mission Fund money, and we'd love to see what the Lord might do with that. So remind us of the web address.
So it's www.fiec.org.uk/100 spelt out. Or if you go onto the FIEC homepage, you'll find details. Deadline is the 1st of June. We want to hear from you by the 1st of June. It's a pretty simple exercise to fill out the online form. So 1st of June, We want to hear from you.
So get on to fiec.org.uk/100 and we look forward to receiving your projects. Adrian, thank you. We pray that the Lord will use this to further his kingdom.
Yeah. Thank you.